Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CPT Nuggets, and this nugget, Closing a Project, is our last nugget covering the Prince2 processes. Closing a project is that brief phase that we do at the end of the project to secure final approval, gather lessons learned, and formally and officially close our project. Closing a project is our seventh process in the Prince2 process model. Closing a project, and its acronym CP, is where we close the project. The objectives are confirm final acceptance. We've gotten interim acceptance all through our project. So at the end of every stage, at the end of analysis, we presented the analysis deliverables and we obtained acceptance. At the end of design, we presented the design deliverables and we obtained acceptance. Closing a project is a repeat of that. We're going to repeat the presentation of our final deliverables from our final stage, but we're also going to confirm final acceptance, sort of a global acceptance, that as a result of all of these interim deliverables, we have in fact satisfied 100%, or at least I hope 100%, of the business needs, of the business requirements. And assuming that we're developing an IT solution, we're actually going to implement the solution. We're going to take the code that was developed, we're going to put it into production, we're going to do the training, we're going to do the conversion, we're going to do the support necessary to make this code work in production, and we're going to declare the project a success. And I believe most importantly, and often overlooked, we're going to harvest the lessons learned. What worked? We're going to document that so we can repeat it. What didn't work? We're going to document that so we ensure we don't do it again. And we're going to find ways to improve our lessons learned so that we learn from our mistakes. The outcomes, the ultimate outcome, the reason we took on this project is to implement the business solution. A piece of code, some software, some functionality, whatever it is that the business had the problem with is going to be implemented and put into play for our project. That is the ultimate outcome. That's the whole reason we took on this project. And because we're going to harvest our lessons learned, we're going to update our corporate best practices, and we're going to ensure that the organization benefits from, learns from, all of the information that we worked on in this particular project. Closing a project, CP, has 5 activities. Much like we had in the last, where we have a we're either going to prepare for a planned closure, where our project is going to come to a normal conclusion, or we're going to prepare for a premature closure, where we had issues with our project, where we had tolerances, where we developed an exception plan, and our exception plan recommends project termination or premature closure. So these are one of. Typically, we're never going to do both a planned and a premature closure on the same project. We're going to hand over the products. We're going to do the implementation necessary to allow the business to take advantage of our solution. Then we're going to evaluate our project. This is where we do our lessons learned and we harvest any reusable artifacts from the project so that we can improve our corporate best practices. And we're going to recommend project closure, recognizing again that the project management phase is simply going to recommend project closure, but we will take that to our project board, to senior management, to ensure that the project is formally and officially closed. And our first activity is prepare planned closure. This is where we obtain final acceptance, not from the project board, but from the business. So as the project manager, as part of the team members working on their tasks of managing the product delivery, they presented the deliverables to the project management team. The project management team has reviewed them for completeness. Now we're going to take those deliverables and we're going to present them from the business, and we're going to say, business, have we satisfied, again, 100% of the business requirements? Or at least, have we satisfied enough of the business requirements for this project to be declared a success? Again, ideally, we're going to satisfy 100%, but often there will be some cuts, there will be some de-scoping, there will be some steps taken to accelerate project delivery to deal with other challenges, and we may deliver less than 100%, but we're still delivering enough functionality that the business is going to declare the project a success. The key way we're going to ensure that we're delivering all of the functionality that the business requires is we're going to validate that the PID, remember the PID? We created it so long ago when we were planning our project initiation document. We're going to ensure that all of the objectives, all of the deliverables that we identified during project planning are satisfied. And when we have satisfied all of the PID, we should, by default, have satisfied 100% of the business requirements. And from the business viewpoint, that's where the project is done. We've satisfied everything they set out, ask us to do, and we have completed the work satisfactorily. They're happy to sign off. The business says, "Great job, Steve and team. Project is done." There is one more critical step to preparing project closure or plan closure, is we need to validate that the solution can be implemented. By this, I'm saying that it is operational ready, that the implementation plan works, that the operational support works, that everything else required to take this code from the project state into implementation, into production, into day-to-day operations is in place. And often there can be some challenges. At least some of my team members get so focused on satisfying the business requirements that they forget about some of the operational requirements. Oh, darn. I guess we really should do backups for this, shouldn't we? Oh, darn, I guess we need to prepare some restart processes. Oh, darn, I guess we need to. All of those implementation and operational activities that are so critical to ensure that our system can be successfully implemented need to be in place as well. So just keep in mind too, and again, if you follow a proven systems development lifecycle, and your systems development lifecycle identifies all of these operational ready activities, then ensuring that the solution can be implemented should be de facto, should be a given. But again, there is that step for ensuring that the code can be put into production. And then, consistent with the project management activities, we need to prepare a final project status report. So just as we did at every stage closure, we produced a stage closure status report. I'm suggesting we should also produce a final project status report. And again, Steve is a lazy guy. He would suggest you cut and paste from all your stage closing project status reports, cut and paste and edit and wordsmith, and use that information to prepare your final project status report. But we are truly wrapping up our project. And just like Prince2 got full credit for ensuring that we have the ability to produce the exception report to deal with projects that go out of tolerances, Prince2 also gets full credit, in my humble opinion, for ensuring that we have an activity focused on prepare premature closure. It is a good thing for our business to close projects early that have gone at a tolerance. It is a good thing for our business to close projects early where the business case is no longer justified. It's a good thing for our business to close projects early when the business requirements have just gone away or changed. So there's lots of good reasons why we want to have projects come to a premature closure. But recognizing that there has been a significant amount of money invested into this project to the point of premature closure, we owe it to our organization to go through our project and look for any useful results. Now, obviously, we're not going to have the final implementation ready code, but what has been developed by our project to date that has value. There could be reusable artifacts. There could be, again, a wonderful analysis document that has tremendous go-forward value. There could be some reusable code components. We may have some object-oriented development that could be reused, but it warrants taking some time to simply go through everything that the project has done to the point of premature closure and say, what's out there? What can be reused? how can our organization take advantage of the time that's been invested into this project and harvest value from it. We also want to validate and eliminate any closure risks. So why has this project come to a premature closure? Are there risks? Are there issues that will exist for our business even after this project closes? So it's one thing to say the project should close, the risks, the issues, the tolerances, the exceptions, all of these things are saying this project should be terminated. It's not the right place to be investing our money. That's all good things. But are there other concerns? Are there other looming disasters? Maybe too strong a word, but are there other looming issues and risks that could impact our overall business that need to be extracted from this project and made visible? And finally, just like we talked about with the planned closure, we need to do a final project status report. Again, cut and paste with a little bit more attention to the premature closure of why we're closing this project early, document the reasons, and then fully and properly close our project. And the key activity in closing the project obviously is hand over the products. Make it work. Deliver the value to the business. And that's basically summed up, implement the solution. Now, that's a lot of work for the team. Just like the team did a lot of work through analysis and design and development and testing, there's a lot of work for the team to implement the solution. There's implementation plans. There may be massive conversion strategies. There may be some long nights and some weekends implementing the solution. I'm not going to suggest this is a piece of cake. This is a simple activity, but this is where the product, the solution, the software is put into production and the value is delivered to the business. Consistent with that, we may need to provide some very specific implementation support, as well as some hand-holding after the fact, some post-implementation support, dedicated 24-hour support for the first week of operation, dedicated hotline with dedicated team members dedicated to the hotline. Do I have the word dedicated in there enough time? For the next month of operations, or whatever additional implementation and post-implementation support is needed, because the business isn't going to get the value if the system fails after implementation. It's far more effective to provide a few days or a few weeks of implementation and post-implementation support to make sure all of the business processes and all of the training and all of the learning curve and all of the adaptation necessary happens to make this project a success. And provide warranty support, I believe, is applicable whether you are delivering this on a contract third-party relationship between a software vendor and a customer buying, or whether you're an internal IT department delivering solutions for your own company. There needs to be some consideration for warranty support as well. I typically think of post-implementation support as very short-term. The first days and weeks after implementation to ensure it works, and then warranty support is typically a little longer, and often we think of, at least in my experience, we think of probably a term of about 3 months where we keep some team members on hot standby. We don't allocate all of the team members to other projects immediately after project termination. We keep them on some kind of hot standby so that they're there to provide that additional support on month 2 and month 3 post-implementation to, again, ensure that we're delivering maximum value to the business. It's time to go back and look at our issue and risk registers. Are there any other issues that, again, didn't get resolved in the normal course of the business, or normal course of the project rather, that need to be raised to the business, needs to be raised to the project board, and simply resolve everything that's been dangling out there that the project was hoping to deal with but didn't, so that the business and the project board and senior management are aware of. These are a few loose ends that Steve's project didn't get to close up. And finally, with that in hand, we're going to close the issue in the risk registers, and we're really going to begin to wrap up our project, ramp down our team, and get ready to move on to our next successful project. And with the project disbanded, the project team released, except for any post-implementation and warranty support holdback or hot standbys that we have, it's time for the project manager to have some quiet time on the project to complete this, I'm going to say, final activity. Recognize that there's one more very brief activity that we need to do as project managers, but this is where the PM is going to close the project. So just like the PM started up the project, the PM was the initial person on the project to do the project planning, and then the team came on board. Is closing down the project. We just released the team in our last activity, and now the project manager is going to begin to do those closing activities. If you haven't already prepared that project final status report, I'm going to suggest we do it now. And I believe, or I'm going to recommend, that you pay very serious consideration to reviewing and validating how well the project has done against the baseline. When we went into this, it was going to be a $50,000 project, plus or minus 100%. How did we do? We delivered it at $65,000. Well, that's pretty good. That was only, plus. I'm trying to do mental math here. I'm going to guess it's 7%, but my mental math could be way off. How are we doing? How are we comparing against baseline? How did we do on schedule? How did we do on our risk? We had a contingency of $5,000. Did we use it? Did we not use it? So this final status report is a little more than the simple cut and paste of all of our stage closing status reports, because I think we owe it to the boss, owe it to the business, to do some validation against our baseline to truly prove how well the project worked, and more importantly, in anticipation for our next process that we're going to do in this activity, is gathering the metrics so that we can improve our estimation. We estimated that reviewing existing doc was going to take 16 hours. We actually did it in 24 hours. Well, that may be some basis that we're over optimistic when we do our estimation for reviewing the existing documentation. And if you can get down to doing some coding development, this was a simple module, or we had 50 simple modules. The original estimate for the 50 simple modules was 8 hours, and we ended up spending 9.5 hours on average for all of our simple modules. So again, that should be some indication that our estimating baseline we have in place in our organization for simple code modules may be optimistic, and we may want to provide some consideration for increasing our estimation baseline. Or we may simply say maybe our parameters that our project used for determining a simple project were overly complex, and we put more work into simple programs than we should have. But basically, this is what it's all about, is gathering the metrics, comparing them to the baseline, and validating how well our project has done against our plan. Obviously, we need to gather our lessons learned, what worked, so we can repeat it, and what didn't work, so we can fix it. And there is tremendous value in gathering these lessons learned and formalizing. You may say there's no need to gather lessons learned. I know what worked on this project. I know what didn't work. I've got it embedded into my brain. I've got so many lessons learned from this project. I'm going to be a far, far better project manager as a result of this project, and that's true. But if you don't get it out of your brain and onto a piece of paper, in the heat of the next project, you're only going to remember 50% of those lessons learned, because you're going to get so caught up in the heat of the project and trying to drain the swamp that some of those lessons learned are going to just escape you. And if all of those lessons learned are simply buried in your own head, the organization itself isn't going to take advantage of all your lessons learned. So we need to harvest them, and we need to formalize it, and we need to put it into some kind of a corporate best practices so that everybody in our organization can benefit from it. And a lot of organizations I've been involved with have what we call lunch and learns or brown bag lunches, where at the end of every project, the project manager gets together with all of his peers or her peers and does a brown bag lunch and said, here's what I learned, here's what worked on my project, here's what didn't work, here's where it's all stored in my corporate best practices or in our corporate best practices. I would encourage you to take advantage of this, and let's all work together and make our organization better. And directly related to that is harvest any reusable artifacts. I believe I had an awesome training plan. We put a lot of effort into our training plan. I think the training plan should be harvested and put into our corporate best practices so that as other projects come along, they can use it as a model or a template. Or I believe my current situation analysis, or I have code, or I have whatever that should be reused in the organization. Again, we need to do a conscious effort to harvest that and get it into a corporate best practices, simply saying, I'm going to tell everybody that my project had an awesome training plan, and it's on the network drive X, and is there for anybody to reuse. Well, very shortly, corporate drive X is going to get decommissioned, and as soon as it gets decommissioned, we're going to lose access to that training plan. But if we move this out of the project space, out of that drive X, and put it into our corporate best practices, it's far less likely to be decommissioned as network drives are decommissioned and space is freed up. A fairly brief but very critical activity where the PM closes the project, and I would encourage you to pay attention to this specific aspect. It will be included in your Prince 2, and the reason I say in such confidence that it will be included in Prince 2, a lot of organizations in practice skip over this all-important evaluating the project. They say, good job, Steve. The code is implemented. You provided all that post-implementation support. I know you only need 5 to 10 days to complete this activity, but we don't have time for you to do this. We need you to get started on this next core critical project. Skip it. So a lot of organizations will skip over the evaluating the project, which I believe is where we get the most value from the project from a PM best practices viewpoint. 5 to 10 days of well invested time. A lot of organizations will resist giving me the time to do that because they want me to go on to a new project. And for that very reason, Prince 2 and the exam is going to emphasize the importance of evaluating the project. And again, I would expect, I can't guarantee it because the questions will come up randomly, but you can really expect to see some questions on your exam from this specific activity. And our final activity, very, very brief. We've prepared all of the work. We've got our end of project status report. We have our formal acceptance from the business. We now simply need to take that recommendation for project closure to our project board and say, dear boss, dear senior management, here's my evidence, here's my results, here's my business acceptance, here's my final project status report. Do you declare the project closed? And the answer should be yes. If you haven't already done this, formally release the resources. Make sure HR knows that the resources are coming free and available to reassigned on other projects. I believe all important, recognize the efforts. Steve is a huge fan of having a project celebration, and I'll come right out and say it, having a project party. Find some way to get the team outside of the workspace and to do some level of formal recognition of the effort. And this applies for planned closure as well as a premature closure. And often it's easy to get the time and often the dollars from management to celebrate a successful project, i.e. a planned closure, and it's often hard to get the recognition from senior management that I need to recognize the efforts from my team for a premature closure. But my humble experience, and I've had a couple of projects that have gone to premature closure, it's those premature closure projects that we probably need to spend more time recognizing the team's effort, because if the premature closure is because of project challenges, that's where the team has put in that extra effort. That's where the team has put in all of those extra hours and the extra blood, sweat, and tears to ensure that the project doesn't come to the premature closure, and in spite of our best efforts, still did go there. So these are the ones that really need to get some recognition of effort. It's not their fault that the project came to a premature closure. It was business changes, it was economic changes, it was competitive environment, it was bad technology, it was any of hundreds of reasons, but very, very rarely, if ever, is a project prematurely closed directly related to the quality of the efforts from the team. So find some way to recognize the efforts within the social norms for your organization. Do that final report. Project is closed. Here's my lessons learned. Here's where it's stored on the network drive or in the corporate best practices library. Here are all of my reusable artifacts so that anyone wanting to get a quick view from Steve's project can find out exactly what happened on the project and where they can go to harvest, to reuse the efforts from my project. This concludes our nugget on closing a project. This nugget had 5 activities, 2 of which are mutually exclusive. We're either going to prepare a planned closure, where this is a normal implementation, where the code is put into production, or it's going to be a premature closure, where we're going to harvest anything of value, and then we're going to do lessons learned, and we're going to close our project. We're going to hand over the products, whether it is the full implementation of the software or it is the implementation of anything of value from our premature closure, but we're going to get the maximum value out of our project. We're going to put it into production. We're going to provide the implementation support. We're going to provide post-implementation support. We're going to provide warranty support, and we're going to ensure that the software, the solution, works exactly as planned. We're going to evaluate the project. We're going to do lessons learned. We're going to harvest reusable artifacts. We're going to produce a end of project report where we're going to evaluate our success against the baseline, compares, and we're going to finally provide the recommendation to the project board that the project has satisfied all of its requirements. It's time to release the team. It's time to recognize the success, and it's time to move on and let the team begin to work on their next successful project for the organization. This concludes our nugget on closing a project. In fact, this concludes our series of 7 nuggets on the 7 processes in the Prince2 process model. I hope these modules have been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.